Hi, Jamalyn.
Hello, Kim.
Welcome, everyone, and hello.
To One Thing More, where we continue the conversation from the sermon on Sunday.
Right, and today we're continuing the conversation, and we want to say to you, Happy Black History Month.
Yes, happy Black History Month.
Yeah.
It's very exciting. Wanda Sykes had all kinds of stuff on her Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Fun people dancing and all of it.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
There's lots to celebrate. But I'm excited to talk about the sermon because this was my
Look
little
at your
scrap
notes.
paper from Sunday.
You got after it.
I did.
I took
was
notes
like,
on my phone, which
yeah.
now I'm realizing isn't sitting with me at the table,
Oh,
but
you'll remember.
I'm sure we took similar notes.
Yeah, probably. That happens a lot.
Can I just say your prayer was beautiful Sunday?
Oh, thank you.
And I really think you should consider putting your prayers in a book.
I've thought about it, and someone even once offered to bind them for me,
Yeah.
and I just never took them up
We'll
on that.
sell them, and the proceeds can go to Zami Fandois.
Hey, I'd
You
be
heard it
willing
here
to do
first,
that.
people.
She's always marketing.
What are you talking
a
about? I
Zami
don't know.
Fandois. That's-
Zami, my mug just happens to be a Zami Fandois mug today.
Which is what you got to do.
Yeah.
We should talk about that sometime.
Okay.
All right.
But today, we're going to talk about leadership as a spiritual practice. Have you thought of it being a spiritual practice before?
Honestly, I don't think that I had. Although I love the idea of leadership being a spiritual practice because leaders have such an impact on people, positive and negative. And unfortunately, I think I've had more negative experiences with leaders than positive ones.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if some of that has to do with us also, no offense, but coming up through the ranks as women. Mm-hmm. We haven't had a whole lot of women leaders to point to, which I think is difficult. And I try to take that into consideration as I'm mentoring, younger women, is helping them understand a balance of family, work, personal life. I mean, it's because I didn't have a whole lot of that coming up. I had one pastor I worked for. She was amazing, but I only had her for just a little bit.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say because you and I are pretty outspoken.
Well, I was trying to be PC,
with
but
leadership.
Outspoken women are very hard for people to know what to do with, which is frustrating for people like us because we're very, if I do toot my own horn, we're pretty intelligent women who know what we want and don't really have time for what we don't want.
Right, exactly.
And that does not always come across well for certain people.
It doesn't bode well sometimes, you're right.
Yeah.
But,
and we both happen to marry men who, I'm guessing this maybe was the case for you with Byron too, but one of the things that attracted me to Dave early on was that he was willing to say, I'm going to need you to back your crazy off for a second. And I hadn't been around someone who would say, calm down, and I liked, he wants to challenge me a little.
Yeah, I've heard something like, I don't always play well with others, and I maybe need to work on that.
I don't know. I've never heard that. I'm a delight.
I said I play very well with others when I'm in charge of them.
I play very well with others when they do what I want.
Exactly. I don't see a problem with that.
But my subordinate people that have what's it called?
Reported
to me. I'm still in touch.
Yeah.
With. I
think I've had good feedback from people who have reported up to me, or however you want to say that.
In the last 48 hours, I've talked to 2 that I haven't worked with for
Yeah.
over 10 years.
Yeah.
5 years. 4, 3.
So
Last week.
But if
All right, well, that's Kim and the ending of Kim
right.
and I patting ourselves on the back. I think that's actually maybe what Shannon talked about. What was that term? Vain glory.
Yeah.
So we just, ladies and gentlemen, we just gave you an example of vain glory.
Right. We were doing it for the right reasons, though.
Sure. That's what we tell ourselves.
But back to the sermon.
Yeah.
The thing that I wrote down first, and I don't know why, if it came first chronologically or just it still really stands out to me. Shannon said, what if your self-consciousness is an invitation to engage your soul and what your soul might be telling you about your own leadership? I was just like,
I wrote that down. That was a huge ding, ding, ding for me. I sat up a little straighter.
Like I was like, whoa. That's
Maybe
like,
read it one more time for people.
Yeah. So what if your self-consciousness is an invitation to engage your soul and what your soul might be telling you?
Yeah, I think a lot of times as leaders, we follow to-do lists, we follow goals, objectives. We don't follow our soul very often. And that's one of the reasons this book that Dave has been pointing to a lot, The Soul of Leadership, is really good, is she talks about, not only being a leader is making those hard calls, but also really trusting your soul, your intuition, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. And also just being at one with really what God's calling you to, which is kind of pointing back to Moses, right?
Yeah, and I think that goes hand in hand with, as a leader, having a settled soul, like doing your practices and your work so that even the tough decisions that you make them gently. Like you make them so that people can sort of get on board or accept the news, because leaders are assessed all the time. Like you're being assessed and then you're assessing, like you said, that,
Well, and that's what Dave was saying. Like,
production.
This past couple of years as a pastor is really tough. As a leader, I guess I'll say, because no matter what, like, let's take today, for instance. We're in Zionsville, Indiana. We're supposed to get this huge snowstorm.
Yeah.
And our superintendent went ahead and made today an E-Day. Well, there's a whole faction of people who are like, how could he do that? The weather's going to be fine. And a whole group of people are like, well, I'm really glad he was conservative in doing that. I mean, you just can't win, right?
Nope.
So that's why it's so important that in your gut, in your soul, you feel like you're doing the best you can to lead forward in a productive, positive way.
Yeah, and what people, I think, forget is that leaders probably have a whole bunch of data or information or input that has driven their decision that you know nothing about, know. So, yeah. Leadership is I guess it should be a practice, right? Because you're always practicing how to do it better, I hope.
Well, and if you want to be an authentic leader, an intentional leader, you really have to spend some time on yourself. Because if someone comes at you about a decision you've made and you're not in a good place yourself, your first reaction is going to be to put your hand up, say you're wrong, I'm the one making the decisions, get out of my office, instead of having to be open to hearing people's comments because you understand that the decisions you're making are tough for others if they don't agree with you. But there has to be space for conversation. That's one of the really difficult things that's going on in our country right now is everybody thinks you're either right or you're wrong. There's no conversation involved in it.
Yeah, making space for people to be heard, right? Even if I don't agree with you or the bottom line decision is going to stay the same, if I just make space for you to be heard, that goes such a long way.
And clapping back quickly is not healthy.
Not usually the best response.
No, it isn't. And I think some people think, well, I'm going to come back quickly because you don't, they think they're being authentic in their reply. And what I would say is you have every right to have your opinion. Can you take a breath before, because it's like in our marriage, for instance, Dave and I have this rule where if one of us is upset with the others, we have a 30-minute time to reflect before we really engage. And let's be honest, that rule was made for me.
That's a good practice.
Because I tend to be reactionary. But it's hysterical in that 30 minutes. I say in my head all the ridiculous things that I think are wrong about Dave. And after that 30 minutes, I'm able to be a little calmer and say, okay. I didn't like it when you did this because, da-da-da, where first I would have been very accusatory. And I think in a lot of ways as leaders, we have to not only be willing to take a beat, but also when someone comes at us accusatory, recognize they haven't taken a beat. What they're saying to me isn't actually about me. it's probably about something much bigger that's going on in their own life, and I just happen to be the person
You
they're
don't have all
yelling
the
at.
information, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Like context makes everything make sense, even if it's nonsensical.
Yeah.
You can make it make sense. And, another thing, I think as leaders, we have a responsibility to use those times as teaching moments. So if we react, we're not teaching a very good lesson. If we can step back and give the person some space and let them be heard, then we're modeling ways to be a good leader, a good team player.
Of course, the most difficult part of all this is parenting and being a leader to your kids.
Yeah.
And because we all as parents react too quickly.
Yeah.
And then we get fired up, and it's so difficult to take a deep breath and have to go back and say, listen, you upset me. I maybe came at you too fast. Mm-hmm. Let's actually talk about what's going on. Mm-hmm. That's hard because in general, I just would want to say, you're grounded, go to your room. It's over.
This new, compassionate parenting, I like it. And it's not the kind of parenting that I received. And it's probably not the kind I gave most of the time. I mean, I think I was collaborative with my kids to a certain extent. And after that, it was like, no, this is not, this, no. This is what you're doing.
Go back to the quote one more time.
Mm-hmm. What if your self-consciousness, so when you feel self-conscious about something, is an invitation to engage your soul and what your soul might be telling you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when we're uncomfortable, that's where growth comes from.
Yeah, and Shannon said that what he might say to himself in moments like that is, Lord, let me serve others. Now, that's hard. If somebody's coming at you and you're like, Lord, let me serve others.
I just want you to know my calves are tensing up as you're discussing that.
Yeah, it's that's that takes a lot of practice, right? To take a step back and widen your perspective so that you can think about the things you just said, like, oh, this person must have something going on that I don't know about because their reaction seems a little big.
Right. I think for me, we had talked about in honor of Black History Month, sharing leaders. Yeah. And then because it's Black History Month, celebrating the Black leaders in our lives who have really made a difference. And that brings up what I learned from the leader that I was going to mention, and which is Dr. Rodney Sadler. And he is, I had to write it down, the Associate Professor of Bible and Director of Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation. Try putting that on a card. At Union Presbytery Seminary based out of Charlotte. And what you just said at the end is so right, like learning from others and saying what's going on in your life. So he was my mentor when I did a year position at a public housing unit in Durham. Mm-hmm. And I was the children's chaplain. Okay. So I was 25, 26, lily white lady, going into a public housing area which was 100% people of color. I mean, I was it. And I worked for this woman named Miss Farrell, who had been the center's director in its heyday. She moved into the public housing area when it was first built. Mm-hmm. So she was the grandmother. Mm-hmm. And I, of course, came in with all these ideas of how I thought things should be done when it's time to do homework and all this stuff. And he really worked with me to understand what it means to work with and to understand the context where you're serving, to understand how my time growing up with a mom at home when I got off the bus versus the kids coming here when they got off the bus, and all of that, how that could live in tension with one another, but that we had to be willing to honor the stories of both sides. Mm-hmm. And then just learning about like the economics of it all. Yeah. He was wonderful, dealt with my questions in a way that did not roll his eyes once. Mm-hmm. And was patient with me. And it was a huge foundation for me then moving to Haiti when I had to work with people in a different cultural context again, and just lots of different places. And I was very thankful for him that he taught me to think, if this is bothering my soul, what's really going on here? Yeah. And how can I relate to what's happening in this community through a lens of understanding that we're all one body in Christ, and that doesn't mean we always look alike.
Exactly. And I think that was foundational to the work that you've continued to do, like the toxic charity work that you've done is probably like that experience.
When Shannon mentioned the
Vainglory.
Glory.
Doing the right thing for the wrong
yeah,
reason.
I immediately wrote in my notes toxic charity. You know, it's the whole idea that we do good for others so we can break our arms patting ourselves on the back. Mm-hmm. And it would have been very easy for me to go into that context in Durham. And it was a very interesting place because it was a public housing area, so you had sort of urban issues in a very rural part of Durham. And so you had, it was so strange to me to understand those two different things. But it would have been easy for me to go in and be like, nope, we're doing homework this way, and we're disciplining kids this way. And I just learned to kind of go with the flow, and, you know, which was really hard for me because I wanted to, I think I kind of went in with, a savior complex.
Yeah, very colonialism.
Oh my gosh, please. Did Dr. Sadler call you?
He did not. We have not spoken.
Yes, I didn't even understand what that meant. But living in Haiti, boy, did I learn what that meant.
Yeah.
Learned what that meant.
Yeah, and leaders can be very like that too, like just impose their will on people as opposed to, enrolling people and motivating people. Yeah. One thing I wrote down too is lead generously with a settled soul. Lead generously. What if we did that?
What does that mean to you?
To me, it means inviting everyone's voice, creating an atmosphere where people feel free to say what it is they think. Because I'm not inviting people to my team who I don't believe are intelligent and capable and creative, and so why would I want to silence that as opposed to like nurturing that and growing that?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than having someone incredibly gifted sitting at your table and not taking advantage of what they can offer just because you're intimidated that someone will think they're smarter than you are.
Yeah.
When I always wanted people at my table who were smarter than me to help me make decisions.
Yeah. Because when one of us rises, we all rise, which is a theology of abundance. But a lot of times we operate in that theology of lack. Where there's
I
not
wonder
enough
if
to
women
go
understand this better than men.
I think women do.
I'm looking
really
at John.
do.
He's shrugging. I don't know. John's pretty evolved, though, so he's
is,
probably the wrong person to ask. But John's our producer, by the way. Because I feel like as women, we have to work really hard to be heard. It's getting obviously a lot better. And so I heard Michelle Obama once speak that as a woman, if you're invited to a table, you have to speak up. If not, you need to give your spot to someone who will. And that was incredibly transformational for me. Because I have been invited to those tables before. And I know it's hard for people who know me well to think, like you've never spoken up. But there are times where I'm kind of feeling out and I'll realize, I should have said something, but I didn't. And what she was saying is, you're representing a lot of women, speak up.
Yeah, and that's when you aren't acting in your leadership ability, right? When you choose to be quiet. For all the reasons that you said, I mean, they make sense. But, as a leader, you also have to, put yourself out there. Be vulnerable.
Is it harder, you think, for you as a woman of color to feel like you really have to speak up at a table? Do you feel like not only are you representing a gender, but...
Yeah.
I mean, how much do you need to carry already?
That's definitely a tension. It's like, why should I have to represent everybody? I don't, obviously, because it's not a monolith. But at the same time, I've been given this privilege of sitting at this table, so I need to contribute, which, can be seen as representing. I'm always representing, though, whether I want to be or not. When people say, I'm not a role model. Well, maybe you didn't ask to be one, but you're one.
I think you might have to go back to your self-conscious and get that soul in place, right?
Yeah. I mean, you maybe didn't ask to be that, but if you're placed in that position and you believe that your work is a calling, then yeah, you are.
Which is exactly what happened to Moses, right? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, you probably, I don't know if you did this. I certainly was like, God, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, that's why I tell people I had indigestion for a year.
Yeah, it's like,
I was like, I'm
no.
working on those stock options right now, so I'm going to need you to
back off
take a
little
pause.
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I had kind of your stereotypical college life, I enjoyed all aspects of college.
Yeah.
That when I was telling my college friends that I was going to seminary, they laughed at me. And I was like, well, I understand the way of people. Because it was, they were like, what are you talking? Right. Yeah. And so it was always kind of embarrassing sometimes when I'd be like, yeah, I know we met because we used to hang out at Harry's, but now I might be at the pulpit in your church.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what?
But I mean, that's what God does, though. I mean, I think God wants us to have some life experience before we get sent into leadership, especially in a church. I mean, all those people are invited.
Yeah.
Those are the folks. So.
Yeah, well. But I do understand Moses being like, I don't think so.
Me too, for sure.
Well, he was so confused about what his identity was.
Yeah. And if you think about even like leading outreach ministry, leading Zami Fanwa, when I've had bunches of direct reports, a lot of days I'm like, this like leadership thing and like dealing with personalities and, oh, this thing didn't get done. Did you not understand like what it was you were supposed to do? Like that kind of stuff, that's not fun for me.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think it's fun for anybody, right? Holding people accountable is never fun.
Yeah.
Conflict is never fun.
Yeah.
But a leader understands that it's important. I mean, look at Moses. He just had like this mountaintop experience with God, comes down with the 10 Commandments and finds out all the people have decided that they're going to worship a golden cow because he was gone
You were gone too long.
He was gone 5 minutes, and they thought he abandoned them.
Yeah.
And the first thing he does is breaks the tablets.
Yeah.
So, it's like having this wonderful vacation with your kids, coming home, and the first thing they do is punch each other in the face, and you're like...
Break the souvenirs.
Forget it. Yeah, like, I'm breaking all your souvenirs, the vacation,
Lost all the Legos,
right.
Yeah.
And then Moses goes on to say, all right, that's it. I've had it. Either you're in or you're out. I mean, it might have been an overreach a little bit, since a lot of people were killed that day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But conflict is not easy.
Yeah, and then, in the scripture from Sunday, it's like the manna was enough, right? But no, it's not enough. Like, we got to have some meat, too.
Well, I mean, who doesn't want a little side of steak?
Come on.
I mean, a hot dog?
I mean, but as the leader, you're like, oh, my gosh.
Oh, that's like my
I'm
kids.
just, like, never satisfied, right?
The biggest thing that drives me crazy about my children is when they argue over food. Like, I kind of want to starve them for a week when they do that. It drives me nuts. And I know that's coming back from being in Haiti and seeing children hungry. And I always go, like, to the extreme like Moses did. Well, that's just fine. Then no one's eating. But it's what's interesting is you look at it on the other side is what was happening to all the Israelites when they were complaining. They were scared, vulnerable. Yeah. Hunger does do a weird thing to you. I'm a hangry kind of person. Yeah. But all Moses saw was that they were ungrateful.
And they were.
But I mean, just like a hot dog is all they were asking for.
As a leader, you've got to deal with that. Right. Like, what do you do with a group of ungrateful people?
You go to your leader and say, throw me a bone here, buddy.
Right. Help me out.
Come on, God. All I'm asking for is like a little oxen or something.
Right. You gave me these people, so they were yours first.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a conversation I've had with God about my children as well. Right? Oops. Is that our time?
No, that's my phone.
Oh.
Sorry, people.
That's not our time. John will just edit that out, I'm sure. All right, so we talked about vainglory. We've talked about Moses. What else you got in your notes over there?
What else do I have? Oh, the book Multipliers. I mean, by Liz Wiseman.
I have not read it.
I haven't either, but I want to. John will put up a link to that or a reference to that. But I think her basic premise is good leaders multiply, people's talent, people's contributions.
So I used to say, when I was the director of outreach, I had youngish, I call them youngish, they were probably 22-ish, who worked for me at times. And I would always look at them like, in some ways, I was the professor in graduate school who had PhDs working for me. Mm-hmm. And, at Duke, I remember one professor I knew well and a PhD that was working for her. She's saying, I want them to do well. Because when they go out to other universities and they establish themselves, they're always going to look, who did they work with? Yeah. And she was like, when they're publishing and doing amazing things, it only makes me look better. Mm-hmm. She wasn't saying it like to inflate her ego, but like why she's willing to pump so much in.
Exactly.
So I used to always say that I had one young woman, Megan, who worked for me right out of college, and I never assumed she was going to stay with me forever. I didn't want her to. Yeah. But I'd always be like, whatever your next move is, I need it to be great or a good step in the right direction, because I want people to say, oh, yeah, did you know she actually came out of this church and she worked with Jamalyn Williamson and da-da-da-da-da. And then I feel like I've really made another contribution to the community and to society. Some people, though, they just kind of want to hoard.
Yeah, and to me, that's the truest sign of a great leader, is that you have made other people great.
Yeah, you don't want to... I don't want to hoard all the manna in leaders.
Definitely not. I mean, because you can't do it all, and part of the job of leadership is to build a succession plan, is to empower people to do and to go and to do. So, that's the sign of good leadership.
So you're going to read Multipliers?
I am going to read it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you read that and get back with me. That'll be great.
I will.
Have there been any, you said you struggled with leaders, but did you think that was our homework, as we were supposed to think of somebody?
I think I have had a lot of leaders that I struggle with, because I am outspoken, and if I think the way we're doing something is not the best way to do it, I'm going to contribute what I think is better. But when I was thinking about leaders, my grandpa was probably my best leader. Like, I grew up living across the street from my maternal grandparents. And before school, we would go to my grandparents' house because my mom was a nurse. Both my parents worked. My mom was a nurse. My dad was an electrician, so they went to work at 7. Uh-huh. So we went over there, and my grandpa would let my sister drink coffee before school.
How old was she?
I don't know. Like, we were in elementary school.
Probably hopped up on caffeine all the time.
He let her have half a cup of coffee, and then we would always read the comics in the morning before school. But he was the how important school is, and because you're going to school, you can do anything you want to do. So I think he was probably my number one leader, the person who instilled in me this belief that I can do all the things that I want to do. And then I've had some teachers, I think, that were really good leaders. And in my work life, I've had a few good leaders. But, people who, can help you see your talent and what you need to do with it.
Yeah, there's nothing better than having a leader who, empowers you to do more. Yeah. That's a pretty great feeling to think, if this person thinks I can do it, then maybe I can.
Yeah, and I think, we internalize those messages from all those people. So, when you have somebody who's internalizing your strengths, that's always good.
Yeah.